Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Preston here from Bull City Reader, and welcome to this week's video. So as you can tell from the description down below, today I'm doing a wrap-up for September. In September, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but for me it is. I read 2 books in September. I'm going to talk about those at the beginning, and then I'm going to show you after I talk about the 2 books that I read, I'm going to show you the books that I bought in September. It turned out to be more books than I thought I bought, but still not as much as I have bought before in the past. So let's jump into this. The first book I read this month is a book called Spellslinger by Sebastien de Castell. This is what it looks like if you go buy it at the stores here in the United States. Kind of a cool cover. It did grab me when I was in the store, but the cover I like the most is the UK version. I freaking love this cover. This cover is absolutely amazing. I think the reason why the covers are like this is I believe in the UK this book is kind of advertised or whatever, promoted as a YA fantasy. And I think here in the United States, the book is actually promoted or advertised as just in the fantasy section. I actually found it in the sci-fi fantasy section while we were out of town for our anniversary. We went to a bookstore that was right by the hotel. We went to Barnes & Noble. I was browsing around. The cover did kind of grab me. I wondered like, what's that about? You flip it over. The description of the book isn't very long. So the description that kind of grabbed my attention says, Kellen is moments away from facing his first duel and proving his worth as a spellcaster. There's just one problem. His magic is fading. Facing exile unless he can pass the mage trials, Kellen is willing to risk everything, even his own life, in search of a way to restore his magic. But when Farius Parfax arrives in town, she challenges him to take a different path. Daring, unpredictable, and wielding magic Kellen has never seen before, she may be his only hope. So this is the first book I believe I read somewhere online in a 6-part series. The first 4 books are out over in the UK. I've ordered them all. Well, I've got them both from the UK and the United States because I like the covers. The 4th book in the United States comes out, I believe, in December, but I should be getting the UK's version here in like the next week or so, I believe. I believe it's already out over there in the UK because I pre-ordered it and it's already shipping. So the storyline was a good storyline. The characters were good characters. There are a couple characters I really do like in the story. I really like Farius Parfax. She is hilarious. I love the person that did the audible, the way that he reads her lines, the accent that he gives her is just amazing. If you need an audiobook to listen to, I would recommend the audiobook. I did read some and listen to some, but good story, good characters. It's hard to tell in the story who I didn't like who was, to me, was the main villain, because there are several people I don't like. But overall, this was a pretty solid read. I really did enjoy this book. I'm going to give it about 4 out of 5 stars. I don't believe it's going to be my book of the year. That still belongs to Nixia. It's a toss-up between Nixia and Scythe. But this one's up there for one of my top books of the year. Like I said, there are 6 books in this series. I understand why he's continuing the series, but after I read book 1, after I read Spellslinger, I did not feel the need to jump into book 2. I understand why he's continuing the series, but on the other hand, I do kind of feel like it could have been a standalone. But of course, you can't read the other books without reading this one. So, like I said, this is, to me, even though in the United States you will find this in the sci-fi fantasy section, to me it is a more YA fantasy. There aren't too many crazy words or crazy names, and it does follow a teenage character, so sometimes the choices he's making, you're just like, oh, really? But the storyline's not too terribly complicated. So I would say this is probably appropriate for really teenagers and up. because I do believe they're marketing it wrong here in the United States. I do believe it should be marketed as a YA fantasy. But it doesn't take away from the story. There's a lot of great YA fantasy stories out there, and this is one of them. So anyway, guys, Spellslinger by Sebastien de Castell, or if you're in the UK, Spellslinger by Sebastien de Castell. I love the line on the back of it, magic is a con game. And just one more thing that I didn't mention earlier, the book really does pick up about halfway through. Stuff really starts happening fast, and it does get hard to put down. But anyway, guys, Spellslinger by Sebastien de Castell, 4 out of 5 stars. So the second book I read this month, I read when I had a poll up on Twitter to ask you what book by a certain author I should read. I decided to read a middle grade book that she put out. That might give it away. So anyway, I read City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, or you might know her as V.E. Schwab. This is a book. It's a middle grade book. It's not too terribly long. I did read some and listen to some with one of my Audible credits because I wanted to know what was going to happen and didn't want to wait to get home. So I listened to some going to work and coming home from work. But so City of Ghosts follows our main character, Cass. Cass almost drowned. She was saved. So because she was saved, she was able to go in between. She's able to open the veil between the living world and the dead world, and she can go into the world where the spirits are. Her best friend in the story is a ghost, so that's kind of an interesting relationship. But her parents are authors, and they have just signed on to do a kind of a reality television show. They write stories about like ghosts and ghost hunters. So they have signed on to do a reality series where they're going to travel around and do a TV show in certain cities about the hauntings in those cities that that they're in. So during the summer, she thinks that they're going to be going away to like the beach house, and there aren't too many spirits or ghosts or whatever you want to call them that kind of haunt around the beaches. And then her parents tell her that, hey, we just got signed on to do this television show, so we're going to Edinburgh, and they investigate things that are going on there. She gets stuck in her own adventure there with her best friend who's a ghost. That's about all I can really say about the book without giving too much of the storyline away. It's a fun read. It is middle grade, so it is an easy read for adults, but it's still entertaining for adults. I don't think there's anything in here that's really going to... I mean, there are ghosts, spirits, nothing that was like too terribly scary in my opinion. So I can see why it is a middle grade book. The world building that Victoria Schwab did in this was very interesting, very fascinating. I think there's going to be more in this. I think I can see how she would do more, and I hope she does more because it was just a fun read. It was fun. It was entertaining. It is a middle grade book, so you know the ending is kind of predictable. You can kind of predict what's going to happen, but it was still fun getting to that point. None of that took away from the joy of reading the book. There were a couple moments that kind of took me. I was like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. I don't know if it's because I just got too much into the story and wasn't really trying to guess what was going on. But yeah, there were a couple moments where I was just like, dang, I did not see that coming. But it's a fun read. Like I said, I hope she does more in this world. I think it would be really fun. Overall, I'm going to give this another 4 out of 5. It's not a book of the year for me. It was very enjoyable. I don't know where it would rank. I'm trying to rank the books I've read in my head. It might be in the top 5, I think. But very enjoyable book. Definitely check it out. Of course, it is October now when I'm releasing this. So it could be a fun story to read with your kids or by yourself, since it is October and Halloween's right around the corner. But City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, definitely recommend you check this book out. So those are the books that I read in September. Here are the books that I picked up in September. So when I discovered Sebastien de Castell and looked into that Spellslinger series, I found out that he has another series that he wrote called the Greatcoat Series. It's kind of like a Three Musketeers kind of story, swords, and people that are kind of like the Musketeers. I won't get too much into the story so that way I can get to all these books without boring you. But when I did my research and when I was watching a review video, I had the copies that they released in America. I did find out that there were some hardback editions in the UK that I really thought the covers were neat. Let me just show you. So this is the first book in the series. This book's called Traitor's Blade. All these books are numbered and signed. I got these on eBay because you can't buy them anymore. But so you can see the number, and then I guess someone also got him to sign it in person. So what I thought was so cool about these hardbacks is there's no dust jacket. It's printed on the hardback. I thought that was so cool, so I wanted it because of that. So I bought the whole series. I found one person that had the first 3 books, and then I found somebody that had the 4th book. So the 4th book has a different number than the first 3. So that's why I bought the books. I did start reading it when I was trying to debate which story I wanted to read. And it was really good. So if you're into fantasy, if you like kind of Three Musketeers, sword fighting, he is Sebastien de Castell. Does it say in here? He does sword fighting scenes, I think, for Hollywood or movies or TV shows. So he's good at sword fighting. So his fight scenes are great. But so anyway, book 1 is Traitor's Blade. Book 2 is a little thicker, as you can see. It's called Night Shadow. Book 3 is about as thick. It's called Saint's Blood. Book 4 in the series is called Tyrant's Throne. It's the thickest of all of them. I have heard that I think he's doing a series that takes place in this world. He's in the middle of writing it, I guess along with the other Spellslinger series. So anyway, Sebastien de Castell, definitely check out the Greatcoats. So the 3rd book in the Spellcaster or in the Spellslinger series by Sebastien de Castell came out in the United States. It's Charmcaster. This is the cover that we got here in America. And of course I got the UK cover. This is the UK cover. And on the back it says Destiny has a dark side. So of course I had to go pick that up. Not really going to read what it's about because I don't want to spoil book 2. So anyway, book 3 in the Spellslinger series. So the next series that I bought, I actually bought the last day of the month. Was it the last day of the month or the day before? We were visiting my in-laws. I wanted to go to the bookstore. So I was kind of, because this one Barnes & Noble I think has a decent sci-fi fantasy section. So as I was walking around, I found this series, thought it sounded interesting. It's called the Lady Astronaut series or novels. I think there's only going to be 2. I'm not 100% sure. But 2 books are out now, but I think that's going to be the whole series. It's called book 1's The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal, I guess is how she says her name. So book 1 is The Calculating Stars. Book 2 is The Faded Sky. Like I said, I believe this is the 2nd and final book in the series. I think the blurb on the front of the book by Katie Coleman sums it up. She's an astronaut, but anyway, she says, an alternate history of spaceflight that reminds me of everything I loved about Hidden Figures. So it's an alternate history. It's, in 1952, there's a meteorite that falls and hits the Earth. It wipes out pretty much all of the East Coast, including Washington, D.C. There's climate stuff. There's climate cataclysm that happens, and it's soon going to make Earth inhabitable. So it's kind of a looming threat, and they got to figure out what they're going to do so humanity isn't wiped out. Elma York is the main character in the book. She is an experienced WASP pilot, W-A-S-P pilot, and she's a mathematician. It says that the back of the book says it earns her a place in the International Aerospace Coalition's attempts to put man on the moon as a computer. But with so many skilled and experienced women pilots and scientists involved with the program, it doesn't take long before Elma begins to wonder why they can't go into space too. Elma's drive to become the first lady astronaut is so strong that even the most dearly held conventions of society may not stand a chance against her. I thought the book sounded real interesting. reading more about the author after I bought the books. She's a puppeteer. She used to work for Sesame Street. She also does audiobooks. She narrates them. So if you check out the audiobooks, I got the first one on audiobook. She reads the book, which I think is going to make for a fascinating listen because she's the author of the book and she's reading it. So she gets to put the emotion where she wants it. She gets to do everything that's in her mind for this story. She's put out on audio. So I think this is going to make the story maybe even better than just reading it on its own, but I am going to read some by itself and also listen to some of it. So the Lady Astronaut series is near the top of my TBR. So the next book that I bought came out in September. It is called Wildcard by Marie Lu. This is the second book. It follows Warcross, I believe. I honestly don't know too much about the series. I just know that it's a YA book, and I've been told if you love Ready Player One, you're going to love this book. I've heard nothing but good stuff about this series, and this is a highly anticipated book for a lot of people on BookTube. So I had to pick it up because I got the first one, even though I haven't read it yet. So Wildcard by Marie Lu. The next book I bought this month is a book called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This has been out in the UK for a little bit. I found out about it through Josh over at Beards and Books. He absolutely loved the book, and it's one of his books of the year, I believe. Correct me, Josh, if you're watching this and I'm wrong. In the UK, it's called The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I don't know why it's 7.5 here in America. The book is about a guy, or Evelyn Hardcastle is killed. There's a guy who he's at the party, and he has to figure out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle, and each day he wakes up and has to relive the day, but as a different person that's at the party. And I can't remember if it says his memories carry over or not. I will tell you that there's two differences in the UK version and the US version that I noticed right away. One is the map on the inside. This is the map for here in the United States. And this is the map for the book, the release in the UK. Also, you'll notice a difference in the thickness of the book, the United States version and the UK version. So obviously when you open it up, this is the font for the UK. This is how it looks for the UK version. And this is how it looks for the American version. So they put more, cram more on the pages in the US version versus the UK. Besides that, and the title change, I don't know. There's not supposed to be any difference. Even the designs on the back are really similar, except the white here versus black there. But this is supposed to be a great book, great kind of science fiction mixed with a mystery thriller book. So I can't wait to read this because Josh loved it. There's another book too where I forget her name off the top of my head, and I'm sorry. She read it. She loved it also. So 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Unless you live in the UK, it's the 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. So the next book I picked up is called Whisky When We're Dry. This might be hard to get this cover in here nice. Whisky When We're Dry is written by John Larison. I believe is how he says his last name. He was supposed to come here to North Carolina. He was going to be at a book signing as well with, I can't think of the guy's name off the top of my head, but the guy that writes the Longmire series. They were going to be at a book signing, one right after the other. So I was going to go to that, but unfortunately, Hurricane Florence had a different opinion, decided to crash the weekend. And so they had to cancel their book signings. I contacted John Larison and asked him if he was going to be coming back because I was wanting to get a signed copy of his book. If he wasn't coming back or didn't know when he was coming back, was there any way, how could I go about getting a signed copy? So he gave me some info for a bookstore near where he lives. So they were kind enough to sell me a copy, and he was kind enough to go in to the bookstore and sign it for me. So he wrote me a little note and signed it. So I'm thankful for him to doing that. Thankful for him for doing that for me. This book is follows, I guess she says her name, Jessalyn Harney. I have the audiobook, so I'll know for sure once I listen to it. She finds herself orphaned and alone on her family's homestead. She decides to dress up or disguise herself as a male to go find her brother and bring him back home. His name's Noah. He's an outlaw. She's also a sharpshooter, so this is kind of supposed to be, I've heard really great stuff about this Western book. It's hard to tell that it would be a Western just by looking at the cover. But anyway, it's called Whiskey When We're Dry by John Larison, so definitely check it out. One of the books I got, I guess you can say I bought it, was the OwlCrate book for this month. I'll link the video up here or whichever side it's on. Over here. But it's the book that came with OwlCrate called Mirage. If you want to learn more about OwlCrate or about this book, you know, click the link that just popped up. Also, I did a comparison comparing OwlCrate to Whimsify, to PageHabit, the 3 book crates that I've paid for. What I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, and did I keep any of them. I did a whole video on that, you know, woo here, woo, one of the sides. I'll link it down in the description below. And so guys, the final book that I bought this month, I am excited to get to it. I guess I'm excited to get to it. It's Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I pre-ordered it from Barnes & Noble because they had this collector's edition or special edition exclusive to Barnes & Noble that she signed. And there's a bonus story in it. This follows Vicious, which is back here. I just finished reading that actually yesterday, so it's not making this wrap up. It will be in my October wrap up. I'll give my opinion on it in the October's wrap up. I'm interested to see where the story goes because at the end of Vicious, I don't necessarily felt like there needed to be a second book. But I hear great stuff about it, so I bought it because I liked the first one. I thought it was a fun book to read. The story really pulled me in. I'm kind of reviewing it now, but I don't want to do a full review on it. So Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. That's it, guys. That's the books that I bought this month. That's the books that I've read. I'm excited to jump into the Lady Astronaut, a Lady Astronaut novel. I'm excited to jump into that and the Patrick Ness series, Chaos Walking. I think that's going to be the next series I jump into, or the next 2 series I jump into. I'm hoping to, again, this month read 2 books. We'll see how this month goes. It's been crazy so far, even though we just started it. But guys, that is all that I got for this video. This is probably longer than I wanted it to be, and I'm sorry. I just can't shut up, guys. Just can't shut up. But anyway, thanks for sticking around if you're still watching. Until next time, keep reading, and I will see you in the next video, guys. Bye!